we're going to discuss now what practical strategies can we actually use to get people sitting less. So if we take the active couch potato figure that you saw a little while ago, that individual, we might also term them a prolonger. Okay, so they engage in prolonged sitting. So here we've got thick, chunky green sections. That's a time when the individual has been sedentary, sitting down. Okay. On the right, we can call this person a breaker, because we don't get anywhere near as many thick, chunky, sedentary green sections. So this individual is quite often getting up, moving around, breaking up their sitting time. So what we want to try to do is change the prolongers into breakers and come up with strategies that they can use to incorporate that into their work, into their leisure time as well. So, from what I've spoken about already, I'll stop there actually. Have you got any questions so far? I was supposed to say at the beginning, stop me and ask questions at any point throughout the session. No, that's fine. Have any of you heard about this in the media today? There's been a couple of news articles online and on the TV recently by BBC, ITV, talking about prolonged sitting in the office in particular, and also trying to get into schools and getting the kids to stand up more often. So, is this news to you? Is this new?
It's not as shocking. It's more shocking than I thought.
Yeah, okay, so it's obviously no big news that a lot of people are sitting down a lot. That's pretty obvious. But the statistics that I put up early on, okay, show, for example, 150% increased risk of diabetes, and those kinds of figures are pretty staggering. And pretty much every month now, there's a new paper coming out to say you can increase your risk of this disease by this much. There's some Japanese group showing that the risk of cataracts substantially increased in people that sit for prolonged periods, which is really surprising. Now, I'm not sure why that happens. We don't know much about that at the moment. But there's a number of cancers as well. And aside from all of that, particularly applicable to office workers, we have the musculoskeletal problems as well. So what I'm focusing on today is cardiometabolic disease, really. But sitting down for long periods, people say I'm getting neck pain, shoulder pain, back pain, and we're all focused on, well, that's because of how you're sitting. But it's not really, it's how long you're sitting for. And the same, we now know that the same applies to your risk of cardiovascular diseases, diabetes and cancers as well. So there's going to be a shift over the next year or so in looking at workplace and trying to get people to engage in less sitting to reduce their disease risk, not just their musculoskeletal pains. But the office probably is a good starting point, because that is the ideal environment for people to be sat down for a long period. And you think you can't really get away from it. Actually, there's a lot of good ideas coming out now that suggest you can. So if we were focusing on office workers, this is typical workplace sitting in those types of individuals. They might work 33.5 hours a week. They might work 37.5 hours per week, actually spend 33.5 hours of that time sitting. That can equate to over 1,500 hours per year, pretty much 67 full days of sitting. Remember, this is just at work, not considering what they do outside of work. That can equate to 75,500 hours of sitting during a working life. 8.6 years. Okay? So if someone who works in an office, you can spend 8.6 years of your working life, your working time, sat down. Okay? You now know that it has a substantial impact upon your health. And this isn't surprising here. Exercise during working hours, tiny fraction of what they're doing over the working day. Light activity, 20%, sedentary, 76%. What we think is important now is to focus on this green area. Can we get individuals doing more of this, more of the light intensity activity? we've already shown that really slow walking or quite long duration standing can suppress glucose levels. So can we get office workers or other individuals doing that more throughout the course of the day? Possibly. And this is just to remind you, it doesn't apply just to office workers. This pie chart that I put up earlier applies to all individuals, right? All adult working and non-working individuals. That's the average amount of sitting time. This was an expert statement that was published only a couple of weeks ago. So I assume you're familiar with position stands from ACSM, things like that. Well, this is pretty much the equivalent. So this was commissioned by Public Health England. They wanted a group of researchers to get together and come up with an expert statement on reducing sedentary time in the office. Would you mind if I asked you just to come and stand a bit closer so I don't have to project my voice a bit as much? Stand up, but just a bit closer. There we go. My girlfriend will be happy when I get home and I can't talk. So, based on the evidence that we've got to date, it's a limited amount because we've only been researching this for a few years. But what they suggest is that people in the office workplace, they should steadily progress to accumulate, at least 2 hours a day of standing or light activity. During a 7.5, 8 hours working day, 2 hours of that, they should try to be stood up or moving around. And this isn't targeted towards employees, this is targeted towards people who employ office workers as well. And if you are engaged in seated-based work, regularly break it up, standing-based work and the other way around. And they'd recommend that you might use sit-stand desks or height-adjustable desks, whatever you want to call them. Okay. But it probably is important to state, if you are using them, it's very important that you mix up your posture. Don't stand all day, because that might cause problems down lower in the leg. Okay, it could also cause back problems. The important thing is to regularly adjust your posture. That's the link there. I think this is being made available to all the presentations. So that's the link there to this expert statement. And that was the first one that's been published globally. First global guidelines of reducing sitting time. And I expect that this will prime a lot of research and more will come out.